Thank you again for being here with us. Antoine is a doctoral student at the University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg School for Communication. His research is focused on
understanding the relevance of public education and government access media centers like PhillyCam.
Okay, and before the Annenberg Center, you got your experience where?
Right here
at PhillyCam.
As the membership and outreach director.
Yes,
Yeah.
and what was your experience here at PhillyCam as the director?
Well, I was here for 8 years, and from 2010 to 2018, I was the third person hired. So it was Gretchen first, then Debbie, and then me. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience. It was all in way more than whatever I could imagine, anticipated.
Okay.
And very, very, it's full of a lot of rich relationships. That's the biggest thing that I take away from it. So like having friends like you and man, there's so many others. I'm not gonna go down and name people because then somebody will get left out, and then they'd be like, "Well, Antoine was on Karen's show, and he didn't say right." So we would y'all know who you are. I love you, but yeah, it's wonderful to just be able to do this work and understand the importance of the relationships that make all this happen. And that's the key thing in my research that I'm trying to shine a light on, really, is about how relational this work is. I think people, when they take a quick glance at it, they see this as like, oh, just a bunch of amateurs or novice people or whatever, semi-professional folks that are just making television or making radio, isn't that cute, and they're trying, maybe some people are trying to get into the industry, or maybe they're not, maybe it's just a hobby for them. But there's a lot of work to do this, as you know.
Absolutely.
And to volunteer to do this, there has to be something there.
Right.
Right? That keeps you coming, that keeps the folks working in the studio, that keeps people here. For me, it's the relationships.
The camaraderie here is amazing.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So, and it's that with staff, and it's also with the volunteers, with the community members, and that's an important part of what all this is.
Absolutely.
It's not just about making television.
It is a melting pot.
Yeah.
Of varying degrees of study and interests.
Yeah.
And we all complement each other.
Yeah.
And assist each other in so many ways on our radio shows or television shows. So I appreciate being or having access to so much here at the studio. Yeah. As the DJ of Crate Beats, right?
Yeah.
And host, you showed me the volume of albums you have. What genre of music do you typically play?
Yeah, it's funk, R&B, soul music from, let's say about like the mid 70s to the mid 80s.
Okay.
And that was a period where, I was, my parents got married and I was born, and then that was like the very early years, like my being in the world and starting to remember things.
Right.
And it's that music was always just the soundtrack. So all of the stuff like from the 70s that they were like going out partying to and listening to, we would have pool parties, that stuff was just in the background.
Okay.
And I just, I told someone in one of my classes recently that I feel connection to my family, and then to like the African, like the diaspora of like Black people through those records, through that music,
Okay.
So yeah, so there's about 1,600 records that I have.
16, there were
many.
many.
A lot, yeah.
I do remember seeing shelves and shelves of albums.
The bulk of it is like funk, soul, R&B, and there's some jazz I have in there, jazz fusion, like Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard, Dexter Wansell, who's here from Philly. So I have a lot of that kind of stuff, and then I have some classic rock, that's just people have just given to me.
Okay.
You know. Yeah.
Okay. So would you consider your experience, your journey, an instinct, in addition to you hearing the music as you were growing up? Like, did you think that you had this an innate characteristic with music, being a DJ?
Yeah, definitely with music. Before I started DJing, like collecting vinyl actively and spinning vinyl out, like doing gigs, just playing vinyl records. I used to play the jukebox a lot.
Really?
I go down to the bar with my buddy,
Okay.
and when I lived in Atlanta, and one day when I moved here to Philadelphia, I saw people DJing spinning records, and I was like, that's the same thing that we used to do down at the bar, except when we were spending money on it.
Right.
And it's like, but you're DJing, you're curating it, because we would sit there, we really think about, all right, this song first, that song. You think about it some more, you're like, oh, that's what we used to do with mixtapes back in the day. You would record. And but before I even like all of that connected, I'd played music as a guitarist.
Okay.
So and that's something I started that at the age of like when I was in middle school.
Okay.
So I was in my teens, and I always had a love for music. So and it always, like I was saying, when I was riding around with my parents' car, and my dad had all these mixtapes. I still remember to this day, just the songs on his mixtapes that he would have, and. That it was just something about just the music. And I would love that one thing about going to church is like when they actually had a band at church.
A live
That's
band.
when I was like,
there's so few and in
there's
between.
so few, yeah. But that made church whole, because I would be like, oh, I gotta sit down through 4 hours
Nodding
of church
off
all
and-
Sunday with this peppermint Nana gave me.
Right.
It's like, but when they brought the band in and the choir started rocking, that was a wrap. I was like, yeah. So, but I would focus in on the guitar player. Yeah, and one day I finally got a guitar after like doing chores, cleaning up houses and the yard and all that stuff, saved up my money. And I was like, it's just hooked.
Right. And so how long
just
did you
music is-
play the guitar?
I've played it for it's over 25 years now.
Really?
It's a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there
Yeah,
any other instruments that
No,
you...
just guitar. And then then when I got here to Philly, I got more into, I haven't played in any bands here.
Okay.
So I would sit in with some and jam with guys,
Okay.
but I never got into that here like I was in Atlanta. So before I moved to Philly and Atlanta, that's all I did was play in bands and do community media work. But
Okay.
yeah, I got here and then I just started DJing, so that kind of took over. Because the band thing, it's so much work.
Right.
And when you DJ, it's like, it's my turntables and
Right.
me.
Right. And
I just show up and play music.
as
I don't have
opposed
to wait
to
for
having to collaborate with a number
what
of
song
people.
we're going to play,
Yeah.
what the name of the band going to be,
Right.
is the drummer going to show up, you know what I'm saying? What condition is the drummer going to be in when he show, so yeah, you don't have to, I had enough of that, so I was like, let's take a pause.
Yeah.
And do the music thing. And yeah, it's been fun. So and again, but just like with my Crepey show, just because I don't play guitar anymore doesn't mean it's the end of it,
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, take a pause, and then at some point we'll circle back to that.
Okay.
And we'll be when Ava gets, old enough, or she's
Ready
getting
to
there.
spin a little bit.
She's getting it. Yeah, she can,
Okay.
spin and then play. We're gonna get to it. She gonna some piano
Right.
and get something.
You're gonna have a family band.
It's gonna be, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Because Jill sings too.
Does
So-
she? I didn't know that.
She's classically trained vocalist.
Wow, I
Yeah, she
had
keeps
no
that to she on the
idea.
down low. Yeah, but she's I'm out in there right now. But yeah, she's a classically trained vocalist and a
right.
trained music therapist. She went to Temple
Okay.
and graduated from with a master's from the music therapy
Very
program.
good.
Yeah. So we are a musical family. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about DJing, the programming process.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Like I said, it's work.
Yeah.
So y'all know this is that's a serious point to me. I can't like stress that enough. Like it's just, I used to try to drill at home without scaring people when I would do orientations at Philly Camp. I said, listen.
Takes a lot of preparation.
It takes some preparation,
Yeah.
especially if you wanted to look some kind of way and something that's presentable, something you can feel proud of.
Right.
I'm not trying to scare you, but
Right.
in order for it to look just kind of like, oh, that's interesting, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And same thing with putting a show together. That's what's like, I think you have like Ricky Paul.
Yeah.
Ricky Paul's coming on.
Yeah, he is.
I totally,
Another good
you
friend of
know,
mine.
there's many. Let me just be clear. So, but I mean, Ricky Paul, Ali Hackett, and then many other, like all of the like folks on WPPM plan, more so I think than me, I would say, plan their shows. And I know Ricky's because I you know, I listen to it, and then I catch it a little bit Ali's, also Snooki Blaze. They have segments, they have guests that come in, they have themes, that stuff takes a lot
It takes a
of
while.
work. And especially if you're doing 2 hours.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's easy to think like, oh, well, they just on there just spinning, kind of doing whatever, you know. And it's like, no, they're not everyone. So for my shows, you know, admittedly, there were some that were more planned out than others.
Okay.
You know, some I just kind of like just wherever the spirit takes me.
Okay.
I would do that. And then others I did have like a series, I had a theme.
Okay.
Those when I did that, those took out a lot of planning. Like I did a series like who has the most funkiest whatever instrument,
Okay.
like who had the most funkiest horns, who had the
Okay.
funkiest drummer,
Right.
funky, you know. And it was like I had to line up records and
Okay.
you know, yeah. But Crate Beats really, it started as an exercise.
Okay.
And it started as a way for me to test my like DJ wits and my skills. Cause I challenged myself, all right, for 1 hour, I'll start with 3 records. And I'll just pick whatever random 3 records. And then that's my starting point, but I can't stop.
Okay.
So I have to DJ all the way through and
Right.
talk and whatever
Right.
in 1 hour.
Right.
No
Okay.
edits, you know?
Wow.
So it's kind of like what we refer to as live to tape.
Right.
Yeah, in the studio, TV,
Okay.
the same thing. So yeah, it started from that, and then I started to curate a little bit more.
Okay. So you brought a couple of albums
Yes.
with you?
Yeah.
What do we have here?
So I think you asked me. I know several people when they see all my records, when I'm on like a Zoom call, they ask me like, what are my favorite ones, and that's like a
Yes.
tough, right? And then you also asked me just about like the inspiration, and
Right.
these 2 albums here I bought. So this is Earth, Wind and Fire's
Yes.
Gratitude album.
That's a fantastic album.
Both of these come from my parents' collection. So
Wow.
the core of my collection is like from my parents' record. My godmother also gave me some records too,
Okay.
you know. But this album I remember, and this has got like the pull out, and it has all of the images. And I remember just putting this on. Probably I got to like the 8th grade, and that's when hearing the record, something about this, and then looking at this and pulling it out, because we had CDs and tapes and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's something about when you pull
Having
this
something
out,
tangible.
and then
Yeah,
you put
and
the
that
record
visual.
on, and you can see and the thing about Earth, Wind and Gratitude album, this is just a very famous album, is a good chunk of it is live. And so to hear, like I've heard the hits are recorded, but to hear them go through their set live, and then you kind of look at this in the imagination, and then on top of that, you like, these are brothers.
Right.
These Black people,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, and then listen to the record, and it's just, you know, mind blown. And then my buddy John and I, we had this Brick album.
Nice.
So, and Brick is a band from Atlanta. It's the Good High, you know, with a funny cover.
Right.
To say that. And,
Yeah.
And funny back.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No, they don't.
You know?
And
most of the albums came with lyrics.
Yeah, you have, this
Right?
one doesn't have the in the side, but yeah, you
Okay.
had lyrics, you would have liner notes. You know, the Earth, Wind and Fire, it has like the symbols, you know, here, you know, the lyrics on the back.
Right.
And Earth, Wind and Fire was doing, it's like the vision of Maurice White was just like to create this like something universal. And it's
Okay.
not just like Black music. Of course,
Right.
Black music is rooted,
Right.
there's Afro roots there.
Right.
But it's bigger. Earth, Wind and Fire's always been bigger than that. It's been a whole universal thing,
absolutely.
you know. So
This
that's
is
like
early
something. This is
70s.
early
Early
70s. Yeah,
70s.
mid 70s, and you know, I think the other things that really captured. So my buddy John Price and I, we would listen to we listen to these like nonstop. Is that we heard there were instrumentals on here too.
Okay, yeah.
That blew us away, and music, and so this was like the early '90s, you know,
Okay.
and the music then, like people didn't really, you know, the pop music was like they would have tracks and they would, you know, a song, you know, verse, chorus, but on these albums there are like some instrumental tracks where they really, you know, you just hear them play.
Right.
And it's like, wow. Like the beginning of the Gratitude.
Create your own verses.
Yeah, the medley at the beginning of the Gratitude album,
Right.
it's just like one long jam.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, okay. Like
Oh yeah. Like
You know,
for example, I remember my first concert,
okay.
right? I saw Roy Ayers and Phyllis Hyman
Oh, wow.
at the Academy of Music.
Wow. That's
My mom
something.
took me. Now that
Wow.
I
Yeah.
will never forget.
Oh, no.
And I don't think that there's ever been a concert other than Luther Vandross that I attended that may have topped it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my mom's favorite. So my mom would have, my dad had the mixtapes.
Right.
So he would have like, what's her name from Philly? G Knight. No, G Knight is Mr. Big Stuff, but it'll come to me. So he had like, there was a lot of there was a lot of Philadelphia sound. So
Right.
there was the OJs
Yes.
on there. There's Teddy Pendergrass on there. Billy
Gamble
Paul,
and Huff.
a lot of all that Gamble and Huff
Right.
stuff. But my mom was like straight Luther.
Okay.
The entire catalog. Luther dropped an album. That day my mom had it.
Right.
And if she couldn't go get it, somebody
Right.
was at the store going to get it.
And
you know?
can sing the
Yeah.
whole
And-
entire album. Yeah.
And I hear Luther and I'm like, oh yeah. My brother and I, 'cause I have a younger brother, he's 8 years younger. And yeah, we just know, we hear Luther, we know all of the parts, we know
Okay.
all of the, you know, because when we do our road trips to go see my grandmother in Ocala, Florida,
Right.
it's about a 4-hour drive from where I grew up in West Palm, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it was. It was just that, you know.
Okay.
Gene Carn was the other.
Jean Carn.
That's what my dad had a
She's
Gene
one of my mom's favorite.
Carn. She
Yeah.
would be on. I don't know why, but yeah, her song that "Don't Let It Go to You." Like I just that and the Frankie Beverly and Maze, you know.
I was getting ready to
and
belt out
yeah.
a verse, so I had to stop myself for
Yeah.
a
Oh, and
minute.
speaking of Frankie Beverly, my Uncle Steve, so my dad's youngest brother, was huge. Is a huge Frankie Beverly Maze name. The reason why I want to mention Uncle Steve and shout him out because he was a DJ.
Oh,
He still is.
okay.
And Uncle Steve came from Ocala he came to live with us for a little bit in West Palm. And he had turntables. And so when I was about maybe like 7 or so, it was right before my brother was born.
Okay.
And I would just sit in his room and just listen to Uncle Steve just spin records and go through and I would go through his records and, you know, we would just talk about stuff. But he was a huge Frankie Beverly man. So he had all Frankie Beverly stuff.
Okay.
And I remember, you know, as I started building my own record collection, it started, of course, like I said, with my parents' stuff. But then I started getting records that I remember Uncle Steve had.
Wow.
So I was building, again, this is what I'm talking about, the whole familial thing. It's like,
Okay.
you know, that's why I collect. I don't collect because of, oh, this is a very expensive record. There's only 50 of these in the world.
Right.
I spent $200. Like I know I have buddies that do that stuff.
Okay.
Mine is about family.
Okay.
And it's about, oh yeah, that's the album. Uncle Steve used to rock that all the time. Let me just get that. And it just, I may pay $2-3 for the record.
Right.
But it's not about that. It's about that it's the connection,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
And it's great that your daughter
Yeah.
hears that music,
Now she,
you know, because then she can carry it and pass it down to, you know, her children at some point,
yeah. Yeah, that's the, yep.
you know.
That's the point. It's something to, and I think
To
it's,
cherish.
yeah, it's very important, especially for Black families, for Black people to have things that
Right.
can be passed down,
That's right.
and that mean and that continue to keep us connected. You
Right.
know, but yeah, I think that's a very important thing.
It's important.
you know?
You know, we spoke on the first episode of Diamond in the Rough. Who was it? Anise.
Mm-hmm.
Anise was one of the featured guests. Tyrese Powell,
Mm-hmm.
Charles Gregory, David Simons, and one of the most important things that we spoke about was leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
You know, so you know it's really important.
Yeah.
You know, to keep our history alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's so much history in those records,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something about there's the materiality of the record, the album cover, as you said, the sleeves, the images, that they contain so much more history.
Okay.
They take so much more narratives
Right.
about the Black lived experience, especially in America, you know, that you can't get from a CD cover.
Right.
You can't, and you totally can't get from the internet. And it's out there in the internet, but it's not in the way, it's fragmented.
Right.
It's probably the best way I can say it. Where it's like you have to go search, oh, P-Funk did this out part, or George, whatever, Bootsy did, or James Brown, you know, and you can get the information, and it's great. I pull a lot of like information just to talk about what I'm spinning. Yeah, sure, I pull it from the internet, Wikipedia, but it's still something. There's that's about the actual album, and when you put them all together, you know, no matter if your collection is 25 records or you got 2,000,
Right.
it's something about when you start putting that stuff together
Right.
materially,
Right.
then you can see the story, like it being together,
Okay.
you know, and
A
living
theme.
together. It's a thing.
A
Yeah.
theme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
But the internet, it's all like, you know.
Yeah, and as we were speaking earlier about having something tangible to
Yeah.
really cherish and pull off the shelf and, you know, put it on the
Yeah.
record player and
Yeah.
watch it spin.
Mm-hmm.
And then, do you have callers?
No, I don't do
Okay.
callers. I never did callers.
No?
I had one caller, a very, very special guest, Mr. Jimmy Bohorn.
Wow.
And I grew up with the horns.
Wow.
And
okay.
never really like clicked how well known like Mr. Horn, like I don't know if you know any fans, but it's one of those, like it was just Mr. Horn. That's
Right.
like Mr. and Miss Horn,
Right.
you know, and then
Right.
their daughter Nikki, who was like a year or two older than me.
Okay.
You know, Mr. Horn take us to the movies, and it was Mr. Horn.
Right.
You know, his dad taught us tennis at he's tennis
Right.
pro. Like, it's just family, people in the community.
But to everyone else,
But
Mr.
it was
Horn,
like Jimmy Bohorn.
Right.
And at the time, he had, so one of his big hits was Dance Across the Floor. And I remember, going over to their house, and they had the gold records on the wall. He still got them, you know. They had the records on the wall. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's Nikki's dad's
Right.
records. And she would talk about, oh, my dad, you know, he would come and go in stints because most of his gigs were in Europe.
Wow.
So like a lot of other Black musicians, they make their money over in Europe.
Okay.
And so Mr. Horn was popular at the same, he was recording with like Casey and the Sunshine Band, right? So that's all that Florida stuff. Betty Wright too,
Wow.
who passed
Right.
recently. That's all like Miami, that's all that Sunshine, South Florida sound. And when disco, you know, you know, he and KC came along with the disco era. And after that, like most of those bands, they still made a lot of money and toured over in Europe. So when we were coming up in the 80s, Mr. Horn was all over Sweden, Japan,
Wow.
China. I mean, he's done all of that. Russia, like the whole thing, like 3 times over.
Right.
So, you know, he come home and it's just like, okay, Mr. Horn's back. But as I started collecting records and spending stuff, and then I was like, oh, that's Mr. Horn. It really hit me when one of my buddies, who also collects records and spins, was like, yo, I got this dope record, man. He's like, yo, man, Jimmy Bohorn, like, da-da-da. And I was like,
Who's that?
I was like, wait, you talking about
I
Mr.
know
Horn?
him.
Yeah. And he was like beaming like, yo, this is the hottest thing ever. And I was like, yeah, that's just Mr. Horn.
Right.
And they're like, you know him? I'm like, know him. Like, he drove us to the movies. Like, he would take us to the fair. Like, you know, all that kind of, they were just like totally blown, you know?
Yeah.
So I had Mr. Horn on you have to excuse me. I can't remember what it was. A special occasion. I think we were doing a fundraiser at Philly Cam. It was the first, it was one of the first fundraisers on air. And I actually came here. Ava was still little. We did a live thing, and I had Mr. Horn call in and talk on Crate Beach Radio. That was something, because that was like a full circle moment, you know.
Wow.
And you know, he talked about recording with Casey and the Sunshine Band and performing back in the day, and you know, he talked about even Timmy Thomas, and when they were recording, and that was another one, my dad they used to live that Why Can't We Live Together. They used to love that song. And I didn't realize, but he was telling me that, it was apartheid in Africa. That was, so this was a little bit before I was born, but black folks were still they were in kind of the radical mindset and really kind of thinking this is coming off of the civil rights movement. Dr. King's been shot, Malcolm X has been shot. So, and then apartheid is happening in Africa, South Africa. And so really people were thinking okay, what are some other way, you know, people really being conscious.
And we changed the culture, the dynamics of our culture, you know, through music, through any resource, really.
Yeah.
You know. So now let me ask you, to me it seems that Europeans are more receptive to American music,
especially Black American music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
That's a good question. You know, I mean, I think actually Ali Hackett just started doing something in England. I mean, he's been recording here. Okay. But his stuff is going. You know, he's doing a special something like that for over in England. Yeah. And is something about, especially when you talk about blues, soul, funk, and even disco, Black music. Okay. You know, and the Black American music, and that they get something out of that, you know, that we feel too. You know, they really feel it. Right. You know, and they really are just so entranced, and I think in a good way, of just hearing about the struggle, just the everyday struggle of being Black in America through the music. And it could be a struggle of sorrow, a sorrow song, but it could also be joyous too. Right. You know. Yeah. And that just is, you know, it's just something. It's something about it. But I mean, that's just. It's known through history that, you know, jazz musicians, you know, they could play over here and they it's pennies. You know, they don't get anything. They get, you know, it's just these jazz cats, you know, but then they go to Europe.
Especially now.
And it's,
you know.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's what people make money.
To survive.
People make money. So I played over there. You know, I was in the jazz band at college at Morehouse.
Is that right?
I played guitar for a couple years. And we went over to Europe. That was the first time I went to Germany, and where else? We were in Amsterdam. Okay. You know, and they just. It was a whole thing. They rolled out the carpet and they was we're gonna have a Morehouse College jazz band, and they had the trip was paid. I mean, we paid a little bit of money, but majority of it was hotel, the flight, all of that stuff. And I'm talking about a full on a jazz ensemble. Wow. You know, I'm talking about 20-something, 25 people. Right. You know, and all of our instruments, all of that. Yeah, and they were you know, and just was loving it.
That's fantastic.
Loving it, you know, so it's but they appreciate the music in ways that a lot of many Americans take for granted, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's this is the consequences of our music industry, you know, and capitalism. I don't know what, you know, but just the way American pop culture works, because it kind of smothers out all the other stuff, you know. Whereas I think over there, I get the sense, at least is my take, that they have a better way of parsing through okay, this is pop culture, but then I also am into this, and that's okay. And I really get into, or people, they just reject. They're I don't even want to
listen
that's just
to
the pop
that.
stuff.
Right.
It's just making money. But this means something to me.
Okay.
Whereas in America, people, I think, tend to be more of like whatever's popular.
Right.
You know, that's the way they go.
Yeah, and speaking of which, music has changed so drastically.
Yeah.
And we have to be ever so careful of what we expose our young people to. So the music that you play on your show is perfect. And I love it. I had an opportunity to listen to your last show, and I have to say I really enjoyed it because you're not only a DJ, a host, you're a teacher. You know, everything that you do is a teaching moment, especially for me. And I know that some of my peers, most of my peers, if not all, feel the same. So with your teaching at the school, how do you mentor your students? What is that process like?
Yeah, I have a mentee now.
Okay.
And we actually just connected through a program called Camera, which is at Penn. And Camera is for emerging academics, emerging scholars who want to incorporate what it's called multimodality, multimodal approaches to doing research. And multimodal, what that just means is like you, instead of writing a 500-page whatever essay or something about something that you've seen in the world or a critique or a story, or you actually, instead of doing that essay, you're doing a documentary film, or you're doing a performance of some sort, some dramatic performance, or you're doing visual art, you're doing electronic work, like you're doing sound, know. So we actually have, there's over 10 of us, and my mentee we're trying to work through of how to do some creative remixing of the Philadelphia Jazz Project's video archives. And I have to, mentoring is something that, it is a skill, and fortunately, it's something that you do have to have a natural, propensity, something to do. It has to be inherent. It has to be genuine, right? And fortunately, every step of the way in my life, I've had genuine, caring, just outstanding mentors, who I worked with. It's very important. And so while they were teaching me, they took me under their wings. I was also paying attention to how they were doing that and what they were saying. And so that's what I try to do. I imagine myself as like, okay, well, I'm talking to Nikki or I'm talking to Aji, those are two of my recent mentees. Like, what would my mentor, Ansel DeLuz or Linda Zatlin or Anthony Knight, when I was my mentee's age, what were they saying to me? So I'm trying to we talk about that connection and that full circle. That's what I keep in mind, and it's a trip, now to think back when I'm talking to like 20-something-year-olds and then thinking about, oh yeah, that was me at a point. And it's like, what was I thinking? Like, what was my attitude about the world,
Right.
So I try to put myself in their shoes. But I think the most important thing is just really being just honest, and listening. To other than for, it's like,
that's a huge piece.
And what are you trying to do? It's not like, I'm tell you to do this,
and you just
don't do
it.
that, and don't. It's not about. It's like, what are you grappling with in the world? And then also when I say honesty, I mean that coming from a place of like humility too.
Right.
To just be like, well, I don't know,
to
talk about, to say like, I'm struggling with this, and that's the thing I make a point to say, I thinking about this, and I know this, and this is my experience, but I'm like, these other things too, I'm still feeling my way out. So we're in this growth together, right? We're still growing. Yeah.
So now let's segue into a little bit more into that mentoring piece, because I think a lot of young people are intimidated by that process, wanting to seek out a mentor. How did you seek out a mentor?
Oh, wow. They were just in programs.
Okay.
That where I was, and I
Okay.
just kind of, I don't know if it really was like I was seeking them out,
Okay.
or it just like, it was very, very organic. That's all I
Okay.
could say, and very natural. And it was just like, you click, and it was different in scenarios. So like Ansel DeLuz was the director of, that's how I got into communication studies, like period.
Okay.
And in middle school and high school, I went to a Magnet Arts program
Okay.
in Palm Beach County that had communication arts.
Okay.
And DeLuz is the dean.
Right.
And DeLuz is from Trinidad.
Wow.
So he was my first black male mentor, like,
Okay.
role model. And is a very prolific role model of a prolific person, and and I got to Morehouse, it was Ken Capers, and again, it's another black male, but then also Linda Zatlin, who is taught forever. She was there when Spike Lee went to Morehouse.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Dr. Stevens, Dolores Stevens, she was there when taught Spike Lee, and those guys, and and people. I think what is the one thing I would say to young people who are thinking about how to find a mentor or whatever, is to allow yourself just to be open about your interest. And even if you don't know what you want to do, but just be open about who you are and what really kind of like wakes you up and
Right.
keeps you awoke and keeps you just motivated and excited about life. And people pick up on that. And if they aren't a good match for you, but they know other people that are like, you know what? And so you need to
It
go
might
talk
be a
to
better
such and such.
fit. Yeah.
So I had when I got to Morehouse, I had Dr. Glaze, who taught my like intro English class, and he saw something in me, and he was like, you need to go talk to Ken Capers and go take a class with him. And to this day, I mean, Capers at all my Morehouse, like I still keep in touch with them, and that was 20 years ago.
Right.
And same thing with DeLuz. DeLuz is
Right.
like 25 plus years,
Right.
and we still talk.
It's always good to have more than 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I have about 4
You have
or
to-
5.
And they're all in different phases at where you are in
Right.
life, So
Right.
like DeLuz, I needed at the early phase when I was, a teen, coming into age, adolescent, starting to learn about the world, and it was just like here, and then you get passed on,
Right.
and you go to Morehouse, and then it's like boom, boom,
Right.
And
Because you've acquired certain
you
skill
kind of
sets.
right, and you just
Right.
so I had the Morehouse network of mentors, and then when I left there and I went to work at I had a fellowship at the Atlanta History Center, and then Anthony Knight was the director of that program. Again, another black male role model,
Right.
in my life, and
Okay.
and he just took me under this wing.
Right.
And like I said, it's natural, because it wasn't like when he first met me, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take you under your wing, but we just, as our relationship grew and just, it just developed into that,
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I keep saying too, emphasis on the black role model, like why that's important for me, not just in general, because I mean, all black males, they really need like that role. That's very important, and I know I'm like sounding kind of old, but saying that, but
it makes sense.
It's very
especially at a certain age.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important
Yeah.
for you to be able to connect with someone who can guide you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for me, it was super important because I lost my father.
Okay.
So at the age
My
of
condolences.
I was 15,
Okay.
and going into my sophomore year of high school, and we lost my dad to a heart attack.
Wow.
And that's a very, very pivotal
Moment.
age
Yeah.
moment. my parents were separated and trying to figure all of that out. And and then we just, we lost them one summer in '94. And, when you're trying to piece the world, make sense of things, and that's I'm sure going back at that, when you hit that teenage, you're coming of age and you're trying things.
Everything seems so complex.
It seems so complex. Who am I? And then especially as Black people, and we have this whole figuring out that identity. And then I think we talked about this, Black and you in a predominantly white school.
Right.
You going over to like these white kids, you like, wait, what, but your community is Black. So culturally you trying to make sense of things and you like, where do I fit in all of this? And
that's right.
And so that's, at that time, it's things can work out well and blossom, or they can go really bad.
You have to put yourself, you have to allow yourself to be completely vulnerable, as you said earlier, to be open.
Yeah.
To being exposed to people who will want to mentor you and help you figure it out.
Yeah, you got to. Yep.
Yeah. So now let's talk about innovators.
Oh, okay.
Some of the innovators that you can relate to in the media circuit.
In media. Well, of course, I mentioned Spike Lee.
Yes, you did.
So,
and rightly so.
So I had to talk about Spike. Before I got into doing community media work, that was my dream. Was after graduating Morehouse was to move to New York, and start doing film production.
That's every artist's dream.
It's like
either New York or California.
Yeah. It was like, I don't know, your daughter,
Yeah. She knows New York like the back of her hand.
Yeah, she made it. I didn't even make it. So I get Asia that. Like, at least Asia got there. I didn't. Yeah. I mean, I've been and I've done my due, and I've actually played gigs in New York and all that kind of stuff. But but that day that I walked into the Ben Hill Rec Center in Atlanta, and I had my first adult class, and I had teens in the afternoon. We were doing multimedia.
Okay.
I was teaching them like Adobe Photoshop, and then eventually we started working on iMovie and whatever. And just to see like how I seen y'all's faces just light up in class when we talk about camera angles. That was it.
Well, you look at television completely different behind the camera.
Yeah.
For a long time, I sat in movie theaters and waited until the credits were done, not realizing that I would be here today.
Yeah.
My father used to develop film in our basement, and I was always fascinated about that.
So it's something, and the thing that I liked about community media is that, it engages, people are, and especially people of color, people who have been historically left at the margins or pushed or kept at the margins. It allows those voices to be centered, people to get access to run the cameras and to run in the control room and be on the radio and go out and do the shoots and everything in the community. And, to connect this and bring this back to Spike Lee, it's like I saw that's one thing that he's known for, Now, of course, there's all kinds of, people we can critique Spike all day about other things, so some of his characters and stories and blah, blah. As with many others.
Yes.
But the one thing, though, that we have to give credit to Spike is that how many people of color he engaged on his sets.
He promotes the culture.
And the culture and the narratives.
Yes, he does.
And especially at that time in 1989 or 80, who else was doing?
No one. She's Gotta Have It.
Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing.
Mo Better Blues.
Mo Better Blues, which was my favorite. School Days.
Yep. Which going to actually Morehouse, School Day still rings true.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I didn't see that until after I graduated Morehouse, and I saw that, I was like, wow. Even when I graduated Morehouse, School Days was already maybe, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 years old. It was old. And I was like, this stuff still is true. Like the way, all of what he's talking about, the perspectives he shares and stuff, you know.
And there was a sitcom that was somewhat of a spinoff of
oh yeah, was it A Different World?
A Different World.
Yeah. So, which was connected to Cosby.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So, which is another, I mean, you want to talk about innovators, that's another, and Cosby, of course, is more complicated now. But for what it was at that time.
The right time.
He, you know, it was all, my wife and we talk about that all the time. Like, even her family, they were setting their schedules to go home. This is a white family in, I think maybe been North Carolina, or they were here in Media, Pennsylvania, and watch and sit down and watch Cosby.
Sit down and watch the Huxtables
together
tonight.
as a family. So you had white, black, whoever, all at that time. And this was, of course, there wasn't Hulu or Netflix. No, none of. This was NBC.
Yep.
It's on at what, 8, 7, whatever it came on.
Yep.
You remember the intro and that was a big thing. It was like, oh, we gotta get there and watch the intro of the.
Don't do that.
And to see Felicia Rashad and black people just coming in, right? You know, you like, oh.
It was exciting.
That's not right. Yeah.
To see us on television in a professional manner.
Yeah. Now, do all black families look like that? No.
No, but we all, most of us could relate to, you know, being at home in that setting, talking to each other, communicating each other in the same way, regardless of whether he was a doctor, you know?
Yeah.
That was really important for us.
Yeah.
Who were your biggest influences other than Spike Lee and
Spike Lee, definitely,
Bill Cosby?
You know, I think, you know, to reflect on Bill Cosby as like I wouldn't say he's not like a up there with like with Spike, but I want to be clear about that. But in terms of like having that vision, you know, and understanding the importance of like putting our culture, our stories, and getting it out into this bigger public discourse, right? And this public sphere where we're not supposed to be.
Right.
Where all of our black bodies are black. And if we do appear in those spaces, they can only appear in certain ways, you know, on terms that we don't set, right?
Right.
So they pushed that. Other people, I mean, to go back over to music, you know, there's John Coltrane, who was here, lived here for a long time in Philadelphia. And John Coltrane is, not only is the spirituality side of it, but also like the work ethic of John Coltrane is like very, very inspired, very motivating. He had a work ethic like no other. You know, and then also, you know, of course, there's, you know, Jimi Hendrix, which I listen to a lot of, learning to play guitar, B.B. King. You know, those influences come out in my music.
Well, let me take a step back because we worked on a project, was it last summer? John Coltrane with
the Coltrane
the
House,
Philadelphia
with the Jazz Project.
Project.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you got involved with the Philadelphia Jazz Project.
I was through
Homer.
Philly Camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So here at the, you know, being the, you know, membership and outreach director, and Homer came to us and had all these like wild ideas about like he wanted to document what they were doing, you know, and this we met very early on at the beginning of the Jazz Project, you know, the beginning of his tenure. And I mean, it's about like 7 years now, and I mean, Homer is filled with vision. Like I've never, you know, and Homer's somebody else too who I would put into that mentor. It was like our relationship has grown into that, you know, of this, what I would consider like a mentorship. You know, we have like really great conversations, and, you know, but his vision is just like astounding.
Right.
It's just like, I'm like, Homer, where do you come up with this stuff? How do you, you know? And so, yeah, Philly Kim, he got us involved because he wanted to make sure that all of these, what the Jazz Project was doing was well documented.
Okay.
And it was a perfect fit to have a community media organization working with a community-centered music program,
Yeah.
you know. And the one thing that I admire about the Jazz Project is that I think why I really resonated with it, it's not a promoter. It's not a concert promoter. It just doesn't put on shows. They just don't do gigs. You know, musicians show up, they play a thing, go home, get paid. There's really a lot more that's going on
Right.
than what the Jazz Project has done,
Right.
has accomplished. And it has put music in places in the city where you don't expect to hear music, like
Okay.
in the ways that it's presented, like the Reading Terminal.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So they had this one event where it was the saxophones. They had all these saxophone players start playing the same song from every corner in the terminal.
Wow.
And they walked together and they met up in the middle of the terminal.
Oh my.
And then they finished.
When
the
did
song.
this take place?
So that was 5, 6 years ago.
Wow.
That was a while ago, you know.
Ooh,
And
I bet that was an amazing experience.
yeah, I think it was called Tenor Madness. Yeah.
Jeez.
They did it twice.
Okay.
And so the first one I recorded, you know. And so it's very innovative that way. So another person in terms of like innovation, who I would have to say has become an inspiration, is Homer Jackson.
Yeah.
Because of what like I said, I don't know where Homer comes up. They just did, for the second time this past MLK Day, they had a band perform suites. They did a music, you know, and there was spoken word, there was music, there was hymns, and then in the background there was like footage. I remixed some archival footage of MLK speeches, and so that was
Wow.
fun. And then of all things though, guess where this took place?
Where?
At the Museum of the American Revolution.
Is that right?
Right.
Oh my.
So here's this
Wow.
presentation of a suite of music in honor of commemorating Dr. King, with Dr. King's image in there, but it's being remixed in this place about the American Revolution. Just telling the story.
Revolution.
So, and I think people don't really, they need to sit on that for a minute to
Yeah.
understand, like, that's what the Jazz Project is doing.
Now.
And there's a lot to think of now.
Right.
You know, they also did revisiting the fife and drums outside of the Museum of the American Revolution. But
Right. Whereas that couldn't happen
No,
years ago.
no, yeah. So, there's just some fantastic stories, and we have tons of footage,
Yeah.
which I'm so grateful and proud to have been a part of.
Likewise.
Just all of those, you know, concerts, and
Right.
having you be, you know, and that's the other thing too. It's like Homer calls the Jazz Project like a surplus. And that's what it's a surplus. It's a stimulus package is another way that he refers to it. And it has definitely done that, where everybody gets a little piece and it helps everybody
Right.
grow.
Yeah.
It's a way for me. I kept up my shooting and editing skills on the side while I was doing administrative work here at Philly Cam. It got you involved and got you some freelance experience.
Recording. Yeah, and I
I've had
appreciated that.
Interns.
Yeah.
All right, Ruby and Andrea, mother-daughter, their team,
Yeah.
they started shooting with me and Homer with the jazz. They were here, but
Right.
then their little production team, their production company kind of
Okay.
took foot,
Right.
because they got comfortable with doing Jazz Project stuff, and
Okay.
then they got invested in their own cameras, and they do a mother-daughter
Yeah.
now, you know.
And they're doing it quite well.
Quite well. And then, managing
sons
a radio show.
and
And
her
then
sons.
now her sons are involved.
Yeah, or commentators.
Comment right.
Yeah.
So it's a family affair.
Let's see, I have just one more thing that I'd like to do with you, and this is it. I'd like to read an African proverb to you, okay?
Okay.
And I would like for you to give me your interpretation. This is so befitting because you give so much to so many, all right? The poorest man in this world is not the one without money, but the one without people. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. There's so much wealth that comes from relationships, as I was talked about at the beginning, of our conversation. And you can have all of the money, you can have all of the, we've heard this a lot of times, so many times, like all of the riches and you can have the boats, all of the material things, But if you don't have love that you share with people, like genuine, true, that deep, I mean, what is it?
Nothing.
Yeah. So if you don't have your love there, you don't have a love, relationship with your higher power, your spiritual, whatever, connection, earth, whatever, beyond you, your metaphysical guidance. What is it? It's just, these are things, material things, that can let you down. Like they don't produce, they only do so much, and they're just tools. But we need each other.
Absolutely.
We always do, to really make things work and to survive. Yeah.
One of the greatest things that I value about our friendship is that you just told me to trust the course.
Got to.
So I want to thank you for your guidance and your strength, not only for me, but, our peers and the youth here within the confines of the studio and on the outskirts, because, again, you give so very much. So thank you for being with us today and forevermore.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This is Diamond in the Rough. Thanks for joining us.
Get along, get shine.